Chapter 1. After 5 years in prison, put there by the man I called my husband, the first thing Hope Sheridan did upon her release was file for divorce. But the clerk's voice struck her like a hammer. "Ma'am, the system shows you've never registered a marriage. A divorce cannot be processed." "How is that possible?" Her voice trembled. "I have a certificate from my marriage to Forrest Weston. There's truly no record." The clerk turned the monitor toward her. "You see, Mr. Forrest Weston's marital status has always been single. As for the marriage certificate in your hand, it's a fake." Hope staggered back a step, her nails digging deep into her palms. Her 5-year marriage, it turned out, had never legally existed. She wandered out of the Civil Affairs Bureau in a daze, memories flooding back. She was the daughter of the Weston family's housekeeper. The first time she saw Forrest Weston, she was 15. The young man stood under the wisteria trellis of the old Weston estate, his white shirt billowing in the wind, his profile as sharp as a sculpture. In that single glance, she was lost forever. But his eyes were only for his childhood sweetheart, Bianca Ashford. Until the yacht accident, when Bianca fell into the sea and was pronounced dead. Forrest drank himself into a stupor day after day, and Hope silently stayed by his side, brewing him soup to sober him up time and again. One night, his eyes blurred with alcohol, he grabbed her wrist. "Bianca, you're back." Then came the overwhelming kisses, the sharp, invasive pain. When she woke up, Forrest was gone, leaving only a check on the bedside table. She tore the check to shreds, only to discover a month later that she was pregnant. Not long after, her mother died in a fire while saving Forrest. To repay that debt of gratitude, and for the sake of the child in her womb, old Mr. Weston forced Forrest to marry her on pain of death. On their wedding night, Forrest stood by the window smoking, his back as cold and remote as an ice sculpture. "Hope Sheridan, I can marry you, but don't expect me to love you." She knew. The living could never win against the dead, so she never even thought of trying. She diligently played the part of his wife, keeping to herself and burying all her love deep in her heart, until the day she noticed the roses in the garden were wilting and kindly watered them. Who could have known that the next day, the entire flower bed would be dead? When Forrest found out, he rushed back in a towering rage. He and Bianca had planted those roses together. They were the only memory she had left him. He ignored Hope's explanations and had her sent to prison on charges of intentional destruction of property, sentenced to 5 years. The day she was handcuffed and taken away, her 1-year-old son was behind her, crying his heart out, wailing for his mommy not to go. For the next 5 years, trapped behind bars, she lived a life worse than death. The only thing that kept her going was her child. When she left, her son was just babbling his first words. Now he was 6. She wondered what he looked like. Fine, since their marriage certificate was a fake, she didn't need a divorce. Now, the only thing she wanted was to take her child back. Hope used her last few dollars to take a taxi to the Weston estate. But the moment she pushed open the door, she froze. In the living room, a slender figure was bent over, arranging flowers. That waist-length chestnut hair, that delicate waist. Hope would recognize it even in ashes. "Bianca Ashford?" Hearing the voice, Bianca slowly turned, a pleasant smile on her face. "It's been a while, Miss Sheridan." It really was her. Hope stared at the woman in disbelief. "Aren't you dead?" A flicker of something crossed Bianca's eyes before she sighed. "I was young and foolish back then. I didn't want to accept an arranged marriage, so I faked my own death and ran off to America with a good-for-nothing man. A shame, really. Love can't survive the mundane realities of life. I've been fighting a divorce case with him for years and had nowhere else to go, so I'm staying with Forrest for a while. You don't mind, do you, Miss Sheridan?" Hope's heart seized. She remembered the stormy night 5 years ago when Forrest stood on the shore for 3 days and nights, clutching Bianca's belongings. She remembered him drunkenly calling Bianca's name, mistaking her for someone else and forcing himself on her. She remembered being thrown in jail just for touching the flowers Bianca had planted. And it was all because the person he yearned for had only faked her death. Now Bianca was back, but Hope's life was already in ruins. Before she could react, Bianca was in front of her. "Speaking of which, today is the day you get out of prison, Miss Sheridan. It's a good day. Why don't I give you a welcome home present?" Before the words were even out of her mouth, she grabbed Hope's wrist and slapped herself hard across the face with it. Hope stood there, stunned. The next second, a small voice called out from the top of the stairs. "Mama!" Then, a small figure rushed down. In an instant, Hope's heart clenched painfully. It was her son, Finn Weston. 5 years had passed. He had grown so much, dressed in a smart little suit, his features a striking resemblance to Forrest's. "Finn!" She reached out a trembling hand, wanting to touch him. But Finn seemed not to see her at all. He ran straight to Bianca, cupping her face with his small hands, his voice soft. "Mama, does it hurt? Let me kiss it better." Bianca shook her head weakly. "Mama's fine, Finn. Be a good boy." Finn turned to Hope, his eyes suddenly fierce. He charged at her and shoved her to the ground. "How dare you bully my mama? I'll kill you." His small fists rained down on her. Hope was completely bewildered until a sharp slap across her cheek brought her back to her senses with a searing pain. "Finn," she grabbed his wrist, her voice shaking. "I'm your mother. What are you talking about?" Finn wrenched his hand free, his eyes filled with disgust. "I only have one mama, and that's Mama Bianca." Hope felt as if she'd been struck by lightning, her heart torn to shreds. Just then, a deep male voice came from behind her. "What are you all doing?" Hope snapped her head up. Forrest was standing at the top of the stairs, looking down on them. 5 years had passed, but he was still as devastatingly handsome as ever, his tailored black suit giving him an air of noble detachment. Before, when she looked at him, her eyes had always been filled with love. Now, there was only endless pain. Forrest's gaze swept over her swollen cheek, his brow furrowing slightly as he looked at Finn. "Who told you to hit your mother?" Finn defiantly lifted his small face. "I don't have a vicious mother like her. I only recognize Mama Bianca the moment she got back." She slapped Mama Bianca's face. She deserved to be locked up for 5 years. Only then did Forrest look at Bianca. She immediately covered her face. "Forrest, it has nothing to do with Miss Sheridan. This is your home, after all. It's only natural for her to be upset that I'm living here." Forrest's expression turned icy cold. His gaze fell heavily on Hope. "Hope Sheridan, you were locked up for 5 whole years. Haven't you learned your lesson?" Hope trembled, grabbing his arm. "Forrest Weston, why is Finn calling her Mama?" Forrest coolly pulled his arm away. "While you were in prison, Bianca was the one who took care of him. You weren't there during the years he needed you most. What's the problem with him calling her Mama now?" "I wasn't there. Did you think I didn't want to be?" Hope's voice was hoarse, tears streaming from her eyes. "Weren't you the one who threw me in jail over a few flowers? I have nothing left but my son, and now you're going to let him call Bianca Ashford his mother. Forrest Weston, how can you be so cruel?" Before she could finish, Finn charged at her again, pushing her hard. "It has nothing to do with Dad. I'm the one who wants Mama Bianca to be my mom." Hope fell to the floor, tears blurring her vision. "Then what about me? What am I, his birth mother?" Finn stared at her coldly and said, word for word, "What are you? You're nothing." That single sentence shattered every last bit of Hope's hope. Her husband didn't love her. Her son didn't want her. The 5 years she spent in prison had turned out to be nothing more than a complete and utter joke. Bianca stepped in at the right moment to smooth things over. "Miss Sheridan, the child is still young. He'll learn in time." She gently took Finn's hand. "It's time for the amusement park. We should get going." Forrest glanced at Hope, his tone indifferent. "Since you're back, pull yourself together. Don't make a scene over every little thing." With that, he took Finn's other hand, and the 3 of them walked out the door, a picture of harmony. Hope sat paralyzed on the floor, silent tears streaming down her face. She slowly looked up, her gaze sweeping over every corner of the villa. The walls were covered with photos of Forrest, Finn, and Bianca, the 3 of them smiling at each other, their happiness a blinding sting. Forrest had never liked taking pictures, but now there were countless photos of him and Bianca. It wasn't that he disliked photos, she realized. He just disliked taking them with her. Hope finally laughed, a laugh that brought more tears. She tremblingly pulled out her phone and dialed her senior's number. "Linda, the volunteer teaching position, is it still available?" Linda's voice was full of surprise. "Are you crazy? Your husband is Forrest Weston, the powerful Weston family of the capital, a connection people would kill for. You're going to give up being a wealthy socialite to go suffer in the mountains?" Hope closed her eyes, her voice terrifyingly calm. "I've already filed for divorce." Linda was shocked. "What about your son?" Hope looked at the family of 3 photo on the wall and whispered, "I don't want him either." From now on, the children in those mountain villages, they will be my children. Chapter 2, Linda was silent for a moment before finally sighing. All right, I'll sign you up. We leave in 2 weeks. Are you absolutely sure? We're talking about the mountains of Appalachia. The conditions are harsh, completely cut off from the world. I'm sure. Hope cut her off softly. There's nothing left for me here. They spoke for a few more minutes before Hope hung up and went into the bathroom. The hot water washed over her body but couldn't cleanse the chilling memory of prison. She closed her eyes, and it was as if she could still hear the grating sound of the iron gate closing and the heart-wrenching cries of a young Finn. Mama, don't go. Her eyes snapped open, and she shut off the shower. The woman in the mirror was pale and thin, her eyes bloodshot. She reached out to touch the mirror, her fingertips cold. She slept fitfully that night. The next morning, just as Hope stepped out of her room, she ran into Bianca. Good morning, Miss Sheridan. Bianca smiled gently, her white dress accentuating her ethereal grace. Forrest and I discussed it. We've prepared a welcome home dinner for you today as a way of welcoming you home. Hope instinctively wanted to refuse, but Bianca had already linked her arm through hers affectionately. Don't be a stranger. Forrest and Finn are already waiting for you in the dining room. On the way, every word from Bianca was like a dull knife twisting in a wound. Finn is so attached to me now. He needs me to tuck him in every night. When he whispers "Mama" in my ear, my heart just melts. Isn't this bracelet beautiful? Forrest gave it to me last month. I heard it's worth over $1 million. I just glanced at it, and he bought it for me without a second thought. He's so extravagant. Oh, by the way, Finn only eats my cooking now. Forrest says my skills are better than a Michelin star chef's. Sigh, now both father and son can't live without me. What am I to do? Every word was a dagger, aimed precisely at Hope's heart. She listened with a blank expression, her nails digging into her palms. When they reached the restaurant, Forrest and Finn were already seated. The moment Finn saw Bianca, he rushed over to hug her. Mama, Hope's breath caught. Forrest glanced up at her, his eyes as cold as if he were looking at a complete stranger. Sit, he said flatly. A waiter handed them menus. Without even asking Hope, Forrest ordered several dishes. They were all Bianca's favorites. Hope was severely allergic to 2 of them. Throughout the meal, the father and son's attention was entirely on Bianca. Forrest would carefully peel shrimp for her, while Finn chattered about his day at school, occasionally asking Bianca to feed him. Hope sat in silence, watching the 3 of them, a picture of domestic bliss. She was the outsider. Finally, she stood up. I'm going to the restroom. She had only taken a few steps when a sudden cry erupted from behind her. Look out! She whipped around to see a serving cart loaded with scalding hot soup careening uncontrollably toward Forrest and Finn. In that instant, her mind went blank, but her body was already moving. Crash, she threw herself over the father and son, shielding them with her body. The searing soup splashed onto her back, the burning agony so intense that her vision went black. Hope, Forrest's voice was laced with a rare shock. She was in too much pain to speak, curling up on the floor as cold sweat drenched her clothes. Finn stared at her, his little face pale. You, Forrest scooped her into his arms, his voice taut. To the hospital, Chapter 3. Under the glaring lights of the hospital corridor, after the nurse finished bandaging her, she couldn't help but remark to the father and son, the burn covers a large area. A little more severe and she would have needed a skin graft. She was hurt like this protecting you, wasn't she? She must really love you. In the hospital room, Hope lay face down on the bed, her entire back wrapped in gauze. As the anesthetic wore off, a fiery pain made her fingertips tremble. Finn stood nearby, his small fists clenched, his expression complicated. I didn't need you to save me, he suddenly shouted at Hope. Don't think doing this will make me like you. Hope was in too much pain to speak, managing only a slight twitch of her lips. Forrest stared at her, his voice low. Why did you save us? She was silent for a moment before answering hoarsely, instinct. In truth, she hadn't wanted to save them. Forrest had personally sent her to prison. Finn wouldn't even call her Mama. But in that moment, her body had moved faster than her brain. This was a one-time impulse. It would never happen again. In 2 weeks, she would carve them out of her heart, piece by piece. From then on, they would be strangers, worlds apart. The following days felt like a bizarre dream. Forrest actually canceled all his work to personally stay at the hospital and care for her. He learned how to change her dressings, how to adjust the height of her bed, and even, for the first time ever, brought her a gift. It was the first gift he had ever given her in their 5 years of marriage. Hope looked at the diamond necklace and found it utterly ironic. Bianca stood at the doorway, her nails digging deep into her palms. That evening, Forrest and Finn went out. Bianca knocked on the door to Hope's hospital room. "We need to talk." She smiled gently, but her eyes were cold. Hope didn't want to deal with her, but Bianca grabbed her wrist, forcibly dragging her out of the hospital and into a car. "What are you doing?" Hope shook her off. The smile on Bianca's face vanished, replaced by a twisted jealousy. "Don't think that just because you saved them, you can win them back." She gritted her teeth. "What's mine is mine. You'll never take it from me." Hope looked at her coldly. "I have no interest in fighting with you." "Ha, playing the saint?" Bianca suddenly grabbed the steering wheel, her eyes wild. "I'll show you right now that in their hearts, you are nothing." The next second, she slammed her foot on the accelerator, and the car careened out of control, crashing into a tree by the side of the road. Crash amidst the violent impact, Hope's world plunged into darkness. Hope's consciousness drifted in and out, submerged in pain. She could hear muffled voices, as if through a thick layer of glass, indistinct and unclear. "The car is going to explode. We can only save one. Who do you choose?" A rescuer's voice was urgent and strained. After a brief silence, 2 voices spoke almost simultaneously. "Save Bianca." "Save Mama Bianca." It was Forrest and Finn. Hope's lips twitched. She wanted to laugh, but choked on a mouthful of blood instead. Of course, in a life or death moment, the father and son had both chosen Bianca without hesitation. The next second, a rescuer rushed toward Bianca, pulling her from the mangled car. The flames were already licking at Hope's feet, the heat searing her skin. Just as she thought she was going to die there, another rescuer grabbed her arm and dragged her out with sheer force. Boom, the car exploded behind her, the blast wave throwing her to the ground. In the hospital corridor, under the glaring lights, Hope lay on a stretcher, every inch of her body in agony, unable to even move a finger. She heard a nurse's helpless voice. "Mr. Weston, Miss Sheridan is a patient herself, and her injuries are even more severe than Miss Ashford's in her condition. She absolutely cannot donate blood. Chapter 4, draw it." Forrest's voice was icy and commanding. "Bianca has lost too much blood. She can't wait. But she's so badly injured. If we force her to donate blood, her life will be in danger." "I said, draw it." Forrest cut the nurse off, his tone devoid of any hesitation. "Whatever happens, I'll take full responsibility." Hope wanted to struggle, to scream, but she couldn't move a single finger. She could only watch helplessly as the nurse approached with a syringe. The sharp needle pierced her vein, and her red blood was slowly drawn from her body. 1 tube, 2 tubes, her vision began to blur. The only thing she could hear was Finn's young but cold voice. "Drain her dry. What does it matter to us if she dies? I just want Aunt Bianca to be safe." When she woke up again, the room was dark. Hope struggled to open her eyes. The wounds on her back and arms burned, and her throat was as dry as if it had been scorched by fire. She tried to get up for a drink of water, but the slightest movement made her gasp in pain. "You're awake?" A cold voice came from the corner. Hope slowly turned her head and saw Forrest standing by the window. Backlit, his silhouette was sharp and indifferent. "I've investigated the cause of the accident." He walked toward her, looking down at her with undisguised disgust in his eyes. "I was feeling a little guilty, but it turns out you deliberately planned this car crash to get rid of Bianca. Do you have any idea you almost killed her?" Hope's mouth opened, her voice hoarse. "I didn't, it was her." "Enough," Forrest interrupted, his eyes as cold as ice. "From today on, all your treatment is canceled. I'm reassigning every doctor and nurse on this floor to Bianca." Hope's pupils contracted as she stared at him in disbelief. "You're going to leave me to die?" Forrest glanced at her indifferently. "You made this mess, you deal with it." With that, he turned and left, slamming the door shut behind him. For the next few days, Hope was treated like garbage. No doctor came to change her dressings, no nurse came to check on her, and even her painkillers were cut off. She was in so much pain she couldn't sleep at night, forced to curl up in bed, biting the corner of her blanket to endure it. One night, she overheard nurses whispering in the hallway. "CEO Weston is so devoted to Miss Ashford. I heard she only has a mild concussion, but he's brought in the best specialists in the entire hospital for her." I know, right? Miss Sheridan is so much more seriously injured, but he won't even look at her. And that son of hers, too. Miss Sheridan is his birth mother, yet he calls Miss Ashford Mama and doesn't care about his own mother at all. He even said it wouldn't matter if she died. Hope closed her eyes, silent tears rolling down her cheeks. She struggled to prop herself up, wanting to get a glass of water. But as soon as she got out of bed, her legs gave out and she collapsed. The glass shattered, and shards cut into her palm, blood dripping from her fingertips. She looked at the blood on the floor and suddenly laughed. How ridiculous, Hope Sheridan. This is the husband you married. This is the son you bore. The sudden ring of her phone broke the silence. Hope laboriously crawled over and answered it. Hope, how are your preparations coming along? Linda's voice came through. We need to leave a few days early. Will you be ready in time? Hope looked out the window at the dark night, her voice terrifyingly calm. I can leave at any time. Chapter 5, Hope endured the worst of her pain alone in the hospital. When there were no painkillers, she bit down on a towel. When her wounds became infected, she disinfected them herself with rubbing alcohol. When there wasn't enough gauze, she tore off the sleeves of her hospital gown to bandage herself. Nurses who passed by would only cast a quick, pitying glance before hurrying away. After all, Forrest Weston had given the order. All of her treatment was to be canceled. The day she could finally walk, she checked herself out without telling anyone. She went to a department store and used the little money she had saved in prison to buy welcome gifts for the children in the mountain village. Colorful crayons, thick notebooks, plush toys, warm little scarves. She chose each item with great care, imagining the smiles on the children's faces when they received them. At least someone would appreciate her kindness. When she returned to the Weston estate and came out of the shower, she found the neatly arranged gifts on her bed scattered all over the floor. Finn was standing in her room, having thrown all the gifts she had so carefully prepared onto the ground. Who wants this junk you bought? He tilted his chin up, his gaze arrogant. Don't think this makes up for your years of absence and neglect in my life. Hope watched him quietly, saying nothing. Seeing her silence, Finn thought she was upset and snorted. But since you bought so much, I'll reluctantly accept it. As he spoke, he reached for a toy on the floor. Hope suddenly stepped forward and snatched it back. This isn't for you, Finn froze. What? I said these were not bought for you. Her tone was calm, without a ripple of emotion. Finn's eyes widened in disbelief. These are all children's toys. I'm your only child. If they're not for me, who could they be for? Hope picked up the broken gifts one by one, her head down. It's none of your business. Her indifference enraged Finn. He grabbed a teddy bear and slammed it on the floor. Mama Bianca was right, you're just a snake in the grass first. You killed the flowers Dad and Mama Bianca planted. And you never wrote me a single letter all these years now. You've only been back a few days. And you're already hurting Mama Bianca. He grew more agitated as he spoke, his eyes turning red. The last time you saved Dad and me, it was just to suck up to us, wasn't it? You just want your position as Mrs. Weston back. Hope stopped what she was doing and slowly looked up at him. She suddenly felt very tired. Think whatever you want. Finn was so angry his eyes were red, and he was about to say more when Bianca pushed the door open at the perfect moment. Finn, what's wrong? Her gaze swept over the mess, feigning surprise. Oh dear, why are all the gifts on the floor? She doesn't deserve to be my mother, Finn pointed at Hope, his voice choked with sobs. Mama Bianca, let's go out and play. I don't want to be here. Bianca shot Hope a triumphant glance and said softly, All right, Mama will take you out. Before leaving, Finn shot Hope another vicious glare. I have plenty of people who love me. I don't need you. The door slammed shut. Hope paid them no mind, simply bending down to mend the broken gifts piece by piece. In the evening, she left her room and found Bianca had returned alone, looking flustered and pale. Hope hadn't intended to ask, but she couldn't see Finn anywhere in the villa. She frowned. Where's Finn? Bianca's eyes darted around. He got lost. Chapter 6, Lost? Hope's grip on the doorframe tightened. And you didn't look for him? I did. Bianca waved her hand impatiently. I just went to try on a dress, and when I came out, he was gone. How should I know where he ran off to? He's not a baby anymore. He'll find his own way back. Just then, the news came on the television. Recent reports indicate a rise in kidnappings in the city center, with several children already missing. Parents are urged to keep a close watch on their children. Bianca's face turned white, but she stubbornly insisted. What could possibly happen? Hope didn't waste another second on her. She grabbed her coat and rushed out. She checked all the mall's security footage, ran through every nearby street, and asked every passerby. For a day and a night, she didn't sleep a wink. Finally, outside a remote little diner, she saw Finn being held by a strange man. The boy's eyes were shut tight, clearly drugged, and the man was about to shove him into a van. Hope charged forward. "Give me back my child." Seeing his cover was blown, the kidnapper pulled out a knife and lunged at her. "Stay out of this." The first stab went into her shoulder. The second slashed her arm. The third plunged into her abdomen. Blood instantly soaked through her clothes, but Hope held onto Finn with a death grip, screaming at the top of her lungs. "Help, someone's kidnapping a child!" Passers-by heard her cries and rushed over. Seeing the situation turn against him, the kidnapper dropped the child and fled. Covered in blood, Hope tremblingly picked up Finn, but she couldn't wake him. Gritting her teeth, she staggered toward the hospital, a trail of blood marking her path. At the hospital, just as Finn was rushed into the emergency room, Forrest arrived. His face was dark. Without a word, he slapped Hope across the face. "Hope Sheridan, besides bullying Bianca, can't you even look after a child? You dared to take Finn out without a bodyguard and let him get kidnapped. Why didn't you contact me immediately when something happened?" The blow snapped Hope's head to the side, and blood trickled from the corner of her mouth. She slowly looked up, staring at him in disbelief. "Who told you?" "I was the one who took him out." It was Bianca Ashford. Bianca stood behind Forrest, her eyes brimming with tears. "Miss Sheridan, I know you despise me, but you can't slander me like this." Forrest cut her off coldly. "That's enough. When Finn wakes up, we'll know whose fault it was." When Finn was wheeled out of the operating room, he was already awake. Forrest immediately went to him and asked in a low voice, "Finn, tell Dad who took you out." "Who lost you?" Finn weakly opened his eyes, his gaze shifting between Hope and Bianca for a moment, before finally, he pointed at Hope. "It was her." Hope stood there, suddenly finding the whole situation absurdly laughable. She had saved him twice. The first time, he called her a snake in the grass. The second time, he framed her for intentionally losing him. This was her son. A tearing pain erupted from her abdomen. Hope wanted to say more, but her vision went black. She could no longer hold on and collapsed heavily to the floor. When Hope woke up, she was in the basement. The damp, musty smell mingled with the scent of blood. The wounds on her back burned, and the stab wound in her abdomen had scabbed over, but the slightest movement sent a searing pain through her. For 3 whole days, no one came. It wasn't until the morning of the 4th day that the basement door opened. Forrest stood in the doorway, backlit, his suit immaculate, his face cold. He looked down at her, his voice devoid of any warmth. "Bianca pleaded for you this time. Don't let it happen again." Hope pulled at her chapped lips, saying nothing. Forrest frowned, his tone growing even colder. "If there's a next time, you can just give the child to Bianca directly." Hope slowly looked up, a faint smile gracing her pale face. She didn't tell him she had already planned on giving him the child, and Forrest himself, to Bianca. Chapter 7. The next day was Bianca's birthday. Hope had no intention of going, but the maids forcibly dragged her to the banquet hall. The entire Weston villa was lavishly decorated. Crystal chandeliers cast a dazzling light, champagne glasses were stacked high on long tables, and guests in glamorous attire mingled and chatted. Forrest stood beside Bianca, his tailored black suit giving him an air of noble detachment. Finn, dressed in a small tuxedo, excitedly held Bianca's hand, looking up at her. "Mama Bianca, happy birthday." Bianca smiled sweetly and bent down to kiss his forehead. "Thank you, my darling." Hope stood in a corner, watching the scene with a blank expression. What a harmonious family of 3. During the gift-giving, Forrest presented a diamond necklace. Bianca covered her mouth in surprise, her eyes welling up. "Forrest, this is too much." Forrest smiled faintly. "As long as you like it." Not to be outdone, Finn presented an exquisite gift box. "Mama Bianca, I made this myself." Inside was a lopsided ceramic mug, on which were painted 3 stick figures: Forrest, Bianca, and Finn himself. Bianca was moved to tears, hugging Finn tightly. "Mama loves you the most," the guests murmured in admiration. "CEO Weston is so devoted to Miss Ashford. The young master and Miss Ashford are so close, just like a real mother and son." Hope stood in the shadows, an outsider. When it was time to blow out the candles, Bianca Claus peed her hands together, closed her eyes, and whispered, "I wish Forrest would divorce her and marry me." The room fell silent. Forrest's expression froze for a moment. He said nothing. Bianca opened her eyes. Seeing his lack of response, her face immediately soured. Hope watched coldly, feeling nothing. After the party, knowing she was leaving the next day, Hope wanted to go back and pack. But she ran into Bianca and Forrest in the corner of a hallway. Bianca was crying, tugging on Forrest's sleeve. "Forrest, why didn't you grant my wish? Is it because you've fallen for Hope Sheridan?" Forrest frowned. "No." "Then why won't you divorce her?" "Because she and I were never married. There's no divorce to be had." Forrest's voice was laced with frustration. "Back when I learned you had died, I didn't want to marry anyone. But grandfather forced me, so I had a fake marriage certificate made to placate him." Bianca's eyes lit up. "So you don't even need a divorce then? Once my divorce case with that ex-husband of mine is over, you can marry me, right?" Forrest was silent for a moment before finally shaking his head. "No, why not? I owe Hope's mother a life," he said, his voice hoarse. "And besides, she and I have Finn." Bianca's tears fell harder. "Then what about me? Didn't you say you loved me most?" Forrest reached out and wiped away her tears, his voice soft. "Yes, I love you most and only you. In the next life, I promise I'll marry you, okay?" Bianca threw herself into his arms. They held each other tightly, and overcome with emotion, they began to kiss. Hope stood in the shadows, watching quietly. She thought to herself, "You don't have to wait for the next life. In this one, I'll grant your wish." Back in her room, Hope began to pack. She threw everything into a suitcase, including the photos, baby clothes, and toys of Finn she had once treasured. The maids whispered among themselves. "What's she doing? Tossing everything out. Is she leaving? No way. With CEO Weston and the young master here, and this lavish lifestyle, would she really give it all up?" "Exactly. She's definitely just playing hard to get." Hope ignored them and continued packing. The next day was her departure day. It was also the day of Finn's kindergarten's parent-child fun fair. Finn tugged on Forrest's sleeve, his face full of resistance. "I don't want her to come." Forrest frowned at Hope, his tone cold. "You've been to prison. Your presence will affect Finn's reputation. It's better if you don't go." In the end, they decided to have Bianca attend as the mother. Finn was overjoyed, taking Bianca's hand. "Mama Bianca, let's go now." The three of them left happily, a picture-perfect family. Just as they left, Linda's call came through. "Hope, the car is at the Weston's gate. Are you ready?" Hope picked up her already packed suitcase, took one last look at the cage that had imprisoned her for years, and said softly, "I'm ready." Without a backward glance, she walked out of the Weston family's grand gates and got into the car bound for the mountains of Appalachia. The scenery outside the window blurred and receded, just like her life with the Westons. Finally, she was cutting all ties. Chapter 8, Forrest had no idea that Hope had left. At that moment, he was standing in the shade, watching his son and Bianca playing a game in the distance, a fond smile on his face. A nearby father struck up a conversation, praising Forrest for being so lucky to have such a wonderful wife and son. In the past, when people had praised him and Bianca like this, Forrest hadn't minded. He even enjoyed it. Not being married to Bianca was the biggest regret of his life, so when others complimented them, he felt a sense of marital bliss. But today, Forrest found the words grating. For some reason, Hope's face appeared in his mind. He remembered her looking at him so earnestly, promising to be a good wife. And she had kept her word, right up until that incident, right up until her release from prison. But Forrest still couldn't deny her devotion during the first 2 years of their marriage. She had been a good wife. Pulled from his thoughts, he found himself, to his own surprise, correcting the man. "That's not my wife. My wife isn't feeling well and is resting at home." The man's envious expression instantly turned complicated. He seemed about to say something, but after glancing at Forrest's expensive attire, he just gave a knowing look. "I get it. You rich guys are all like that." With that, the man turned away, moving a few steps from Forrest as if to avoid him. The look in his eyes made Forrest inexplicably uncomfortable. Just as he was about to say something, a sudden shout came from the distance. "Whoa, careful!" Forrest's head snapped toward the sound. He saw Bianca, who was riding a tandem bicycle, suddenly wobble and fall, bringing Finn, who was on the back seat, crashing to the ground with her. Forrest's heart clenched, and he sprinted over. Although they were helped up quickly, both Finn and Bianca had scrapes and bruises, with Finn's being more severe. The small boy was curled up in Forrest's arms, sobbing. A kindergarten teacher ran after them, apologizing to the grim-faced Forrest. "I'm so sorry, CEO Weston. This was our oversight. We'll cover all of your son's medical expenses." Forrest didn't say a word, just strode to the car and pulled the door shut, cutting off all sound from the outside. Bianca, who arrived a moment later, was left standing there, stunned. She clenched her fists, trying to suppress her frustration. It was the first time Forrest had ever ignored her like this. The driver quickly took the three of them to the hospital. After a team of doctors attended to him, Finn's wounds were bandaged, and an IV was started in his small hand. Forrest gently wiped the tears from his son's eyes before quietly stepping out of the room. The moment the door closed, Bianca, who had been sitting in a nearby chair, stood up, her voice full of concern. "Is the boy all right?" Forrest paused, then shook his head. "He's fine." Bianca let out a breath of relief, her face a mask of self-blame. "It's all my fault. If it weren't for me, Finn wouldn't have gotten hurt." As she spoke, she choked up, artfully revealing the scrapes on her hand. In the past, the sight of an injury on Bianca's hand would have sent Forrest into a panic, and he would have immediately summoned every dermatologist to consult. But now, seeing her wound, he was inexplicably reminded of a scene from his son's 1-month birthday party. A guest's mischievous child, trying to get a look at the baby, had accidentally tipped over the cradle. Hope, who was nearby, had lunged to catch the falling infant. The baby was unharmed, but her own knees were bleeding from the fall. Yet she hadn't spared them a glance, focused only on comforting the frightened, crying child in her arms. Chapter 9, but what had Bianca done today? The moment the bicycle fell, not only did she fail to check on her son, but she crawled out from under the bike and moved away to avoid further injury. Forrest wasn't incapable of understanding her actions. After all, she and his son shared no blood. But it still bothered him because Bianca had told him, and the world, countless times, that she would treat Finn as her own child. Over the years, Bianca had gained a great deal of public sympathy and a sterling reputation by using his son, which had been a huge help in her divorce and her life in general. Yet, when it came to a small incident like this was how she behaved. For a moment, Forrest's heart was a tangle of complex emotions. It wasn't until Bianca called his name with a hint of panic that Forrest snapped back to reality. He looked at the woman before him again, but now there was a distance in his eyes that even he hadn't noticed. "I'm fine, Bianca. You should go back to your room and rest. I'll take care of Finn." This time, Forrest didn't say he would come to see her. Bianca bit her lip, hiding the jealousy in her eyes as she nodded and turned to leave. After watching Bianca return to her room, Forrest sat down in a chair and took out his phone to call home. Something this major had happened to his son. As his mother, Hope should at least be informed. If she had any conscience, she would come to the hospital to see her son, even if it was just a glance from the doorway. Soon, the butler on the other end received Forrest's order but didn't immediately agree. He spoke hesitantly. "Sir, Madam went out this morning and hasn't returned yet." Forrest's face darkened. "Out? Where did she go?" The butler didn't know, but Forrest already had an answer in his heart. She was undoubtedly jealous after seeing him and Bianca take the boy to the school fair. She was throwing a tantrum, had run away from home, but Forrest wasn't worried. Hope was an orphan and a housewife. She would have to come back eventually. With that thought, Forrest suppressed his anger and said coolly, "When she gets back, tell her to come to the hospital." He hung up and, after instructing the guards at the door, hurried back to the office to handle urgent business. Late that night, as the two bodyguards were dozing off, Bianca suddenly appeared. They recognized her, of course, and opened the door for her without a word. The sound of her high heels clicking on the floor was eerily sharp in the darkness. Bianca stopped in front of Finn's bed and looked down at him with a chilling gaze. Tough little guy, still not dead. As if sensing her malice, Finn shivered in his sleep. "No, don't," Bianca sneered and turned to look at the window. She walked over and opened it a crack. The weather had recently turned cold. A slight draft was enough to make an adult sick, let alone a child who was already ill. A cruel glint appeared in Bianca's eyes. The next day, an exhausted Forrest was walking down the hospital corridor. Before he could even push open his son's door, a series of urgent alarms blared from within. Instantly, a swarm of doctors rushed past him, shoving him aside as they poured into the room. After the doctor's emergency intervention, Finn's condition stabilized. It was only then that a shell-shocked Forrest learned that his son had been exposed to a cold draft all night, had contracted the flu, and had almost died. His eyes darkened. Just as he was about to berate the two irresponsible guards at the door, his son on the bed began to cry weakly. The sound tore at Forrest's heart. He rushed to his son's side, holding him and cooing, "It's okay, don't cry, Daddy's here." But his son, made fragile by his illness, rejected his comfort, pushing him away as he wailed. "Mama, I want Mama." Forrest, thinking his son meant Bianca, quickly agreed. All right, don't cry. Daddy will get Aunt Bianca to come be with you." Those words seemed to flip a switch in Finn. He suddenly shrieked in terror. No, Chapter 10, Forrest was puzzled. Less than a year after Hope's imprisonment, Bianca had miraculously reappeared in his life, and she had been caring for Finn ever since. Over the years, Finn had grown very fond of his new mother. He even frequently said he wanted Bianca to be his new mom. But now, not only did he not want Bianca to take care of him, he seemed terrified of her. Suspicion took root in Forrest's mind, but his son's well-being was the priority. This time, he sent new bodyguards back to the villa to invite Hope over. But not only did the bodyguards fail to bring her back, they returned with a document. Forrest suppressed the rage in his heart and opened the agreement. When he saw the words, "voluntary relinquishment of custody," at the top of the page, he froze. How could this be? He quickly flipped to the last page, and sure enough, in the corner was Hope's decisive signature. "I, Hope Sheridan, voluntarily and automatically relinquish custody of my son, Finn Weston." The sentence was a dagger that plunged straight through Forrest's body, the pain so intense that his vision blurred. Hope had given up custody of her son? How could she give up custody of her child? She loved him so much Forrest's thoughts drifted, and he was suddenly back in the past, seeing fleeting images of Hope with their child. He saw her pregnant, stroking her belly with anticipation, tirelessly asking the designer to revise the nursery plans again and again. He saw her after a difficult birth, unconscious, yet still begging the doctors to save her baby. He saw her later, always holding their child, never letting go. Even the letters she sent from prison were filled with talk of their son. She loved him so much, so why would she suddenly abandon him? Could it be that she was abandoning him, her husband, as well? The paper in his hand was crushed by his white-knuckled grip, the creases trembling violently. He abruptly pulled out his phone and made a call. Soon, the person on the other end gave Forrest a clear answer. "Yes, Mr. Weston." Mrs. Weston came to the Civil Affairs Bureau on the day of her release. Forrest didn't hear another word. His mind was consumed by a single thought. His guess was correct. Hope had given up her own child, whom she cherished more than her own life. Why would she want him, her husband, anymore? She went to the bureau that day. She must have found out about the fake marriage certificate then. That's why she suddenly disappeared. No, she wouldn't leave him. She loved him so much. So much that she could tolerate his obsession with Bianca. So much that even when he personally sent her to prison, she never once spoke of leaving him. She must be angry after all. She had put up with so much for so many years. She deserved to have a tantrum. Yes, that must be it. In that case, he would just have to coax her a little. Besides, his son was more important right now. With that thought, Forrest took a deep breath, suppressing an inexplicable panic. For the first time, he initiated a call to Hope. Ring, ring. Forrest sat by the hospital bed. Through the glass, he could see the sun slowly sinking below the horizon, the sky gradually darkening. And his heart, like the sky, sank with it, a flicker of impatience rising within him. She didn't answer his calls, not a single one. He took a deep breath and decided to call her relatives, but as he scrolled through his contacts, he realized he didn't even know who her friends were. Chapter 11, and the worst was yet to come. When Finn woke up and still hadn't seen his birth mother, he started wailing again. Sobbing, he hiccuped and tugged on Forrest's shirt. "Dad, Mom isn't coming to see me. Is she still mad at me?" Forrest thought for a moment. His son hadn't really done anything to Hope. Just as he was about to dismiss his son's concern, Finn continued on his own. "I didn't mean to do those things to Mom. It's just that Aunt Bianca kept telling me that Mom was a snake in the grass." She said Mom deliberately killed the flowers you and she planted, and did all those things to her, just to get back the position of Mrs. Weston and drive Aunt Bianca away for good. So I listened to Aunt Bianca and deliberately hit Mom the day she came back, and then I told you that Mom had pushed Aunt Bianca. And the car crash, it was Aunt Bianca who told me to get you out of the way. And the time I got lost, it was Aunt Bianca who took me out and left me, and then told me to say it was Mom when you asked. The more Finn spoke, the more Forrest's body stiffened, a layer of frost creeping into his eyes. Shock outweighed anger. Forrest could never have imagined that the truth behind everything was that Bianca had incited his own son to do it. Why would she do that? His heart had only ever belonged to Bianca. He had even told her countless times that he would give her anything except marriage. A flood of questions threw Forrest into turmoil. He gripped the bed rail, forcing himself to stand steady. He had to find Bianca. He had to demand an explanation. He rushed out of the hospital room without a second thought. The sky gradually brightened, warm sunlight embracing the world, but Forrest's world had been turned upside down. Bianca's room was a VIP suite at the other end of the corridor. When Forrest arrived, he saw two unfamiliar bodyguards in sunglasses standing outside her door. Just then, a miserable scream came from inside the room. "No, get away from me!" It was followed by the sharp crack of a slap. Feeling a sense of foreboding, Forrest forgot his initial purpose and was about to rush into the room to save her. But the two bodyguards in black suits suddenly blocked his path. "Sir, please stop." One of the bodyguards held out a hand, his tone polite but firm. Forrest was taken aback, then frowned, his voice tight with urgency. "Move." "I'm going in." The bodyguards exchanged a look, but their tone remained resolute. "Sorry, our employer has given orders. No one is allowed in." Just as Forrest was about to force his way in, the closed door was opened from the inside. A tall man emerged, dragging Bianca by the collar. The moment their eyes met, they recognized each other. Forrest had never expected Bianca's husband to cross the ocean from America to be here. Remembering Bianca's complaints about her vicious husband, Forrest became wary. He tried to pull the battered Bianca from Grant Everton's grasp, while warning him not to act rashly. Grant Everton sized up Forrest and sneered. "Mr. Weston, did this tramp not tell you about her glorious achievements abroad?" The words seemed to have stepped on Bianca's tail. She shrieked and lunged at Grant's face. "Grant Everton, don't you dare spew nonsense." Seeing the once gentle and obedient girl from his youth suddenly transform into this, Forrest was momentarily stunned. Grant Everton frowned and motioned for his bodyguards to restrain Bianca and gag her. "Mr. Weston, I think we need to have a proper talk and clear up the misunderstanding between us." In a coffee shop across the street from the hospital, Grant Everton took a sip of bitter coffee and began to slowly recount his past with Bianca. Chapter 12, it was a story Forrest didn't know. Years ago, Bianca hadn't been forced into an arranged marriage by her family, nor had she been threatened. She was simply bored with her life and wanted some excitement. So she faked her own death and ran away abroad with the most handsome bodyguard in her house, Grant Everton. To be chosen by the high and mighty heiress was a dream come true for Grant. He was ecstatic. To ensure Bianca could continue her lavish lifestyle, Grant began to work himself to the bone. Bars, casinos, even underground fighting rings, Grant did it all. At first, Bianca was happy, saying she had married the right man. But then she started to complain about his scars and the smell of sweat on him. Eventually, any little thing would set her off, and she would blame him, saying that if she hadn't married him, she wouldn't have had to suffer in America. So, while he was in the underground ring for another fight, Bianca took all their money and fled back to her home country. All she left him was a court-ordered divorce agreement. That day, Grant was beaten so badly, he nearly died at home. He was saved only because his own wealthy family, who had been searching for him for years, found him. Only then was he able to survive, to return to his country and settle the score with his ex-wife. That's why Bianca, upon learning this, had been so desperate to find a protector Forrest Weston. After all, in the capital's elite circle, only the Weston family could stand up to the Evertons. But just as Grant was about to return, his grandfather fell gravely ill. As the newly found grandson, he had to stay by his grandfather's side and see him off. This delayed him for 2 years. He had only just flown back today. As he finished his story, Grant laughed. I've also been investigating you these past 2 years. I found that you're quite protective of her. Even your son follows your lead. I'm just curious to see your reaction when you find out her true colors. Grant's deep voice reached Forrest's ears, but it was like a thunderclap that shattered his sanity. An indescribable emotion surged within him: hatred, deep resentment, and disbelief. After a long moment, a self-deprecating laugh escaped Forrest's lips. He covered his face with his hand, his laughter growing louder, more pathetic. This was the woman he had loved for years. This was the woman he could never forget. This was the woman he thought fate had mercifully returned to him. He had loved Bianca since they were children, so he had always indulged her little tempers, fulfilled her every wish. But they had been together for so many years without ever crossing that final line. Just as Forrest had decided to confess his feelings to Bianca, she had her boating accident. When she reappeared in his life, it was she who told him she loved him, that he was the only one she could rely on. Forrest was overjoyed. He immediately poured out all the love he had kept in his heart just for her. She had no home, so he immediately brought her into his. She had a divorce case with her ex-husband, so he used the Weston Corporation's power to hire the best divorce lawyers to fight for her. Her identity was looked down upon, so he and his son kept her by their side, backing her up. It could be said that Forrest had given her everything but marriage. So much so that people now either thought Bianca's position as Mrs. Weston had been stolen by Hope, or they thought she already was Mrs. Weston. He had given her his whole heart, but now her ex-husband was telling him that Bianca had never accepted his heart and had instead thrown it on the ground and stomped on it. Chapter 13, but Grant, wanting to ensure Forrest was truly awakened, dropped another bombshell. Those flowers of yours, they weren't killed by your wife. Bianca had someone scald them with boiling water beforehand. Because before she came back, she did her homework. To make sure you would be completely devoted to her, she deliberately set you up to imprison your wife. That way, even when your wife got out, she would pose no threat to her place in your heart. Only after your hatred for your wife peaked, after your son despised her too, and after you both were reminded of how good Bianca was, did she reappear before you. From her departure to her return, every step was her meticulous design. Forrest Weston, you've known Bianca for so many years. How could you not have seen her true face? She used to mock you in front of me all the time. Said she didn't even need to seduce you. A simple wave of her hand and you'd come running. She said you were just a compromise for her, that if she could have reached the top echelons, she wouldn't have given you a second glance. Buzz. Forrest's mind went blank. He shot his head up to look at the man before him. What did you just say? Those flowers, the ones he and Bianca had planted together, they weren't killed by Hope. Grant put down his coffee cup. CEO Weston, I suggest you investigate your household staff properly. Otherwise, you won't even know when you've been stabbed in the back. Forrest Weston, I swear to you, I didn't kill those flowers, they were fine after I watered them yesterday. In his mind's eye, the image of Hope kneeling on the ground, clutching his pant leg and pleading with him, was still vivid. Her small face was streaked with tears, her eyes filled with fear, terror, and begging. Even as she cried to the point of fainting, he had not softened. He had pried her fingers off, one by one, and sent her to prison. At the time, Forrest still felt it wasn't enough, which was why he had instructed the guards to take good care of her. But today, someone was telling him that Hope hadn't killed those flowers. Had he really wronged her? Forrest gripped the steering wheel, slammed on the accelerator, and sped toward the villa. He ran several red lights, and with a screeching turn, he abandoned the still rolling car and strode into the house. Several maids, seeing the master of the house return, hurried to greet him, but Forrest ignored them completely, grabbing the head maid by the collar, his face grave. I'm asking you one more time. Who killed those flowers? The maids' faces turned ashen, their eyes screaming that it was all over. They trembled violently, unable to utter a single word. Speak! Forrest threw the maid to the ground and kicked her hard. If you dare lie to me again, you'll spend the rest of your life in prison. The head maid knelt on the floor, kowtowing repeatedly, forcing the answer through her chattering teeth. It was Miss Ashford who told me to do it. Hearing the name Miss Ashford, Forrest closed his eyes and took a deep, shuddering breath. Miss Ashford, Bianca Ashford, it really was her. Forrest Weston, I beg you, Don't send me to prison. Finn can't be without a mother. Hope's desperate, heart-wrenching cries from that day echoed in his ears again. You'll regret this. You will definitely regret this. Forrest's fists clenched tighter and tighter. He bit his lip so hard that the taste of iron filled his mouth. Wrong. It was all wrong. Everything was wrong. He had trusted the wrong person. He had wronged Hope, causing her to be unjustly imprisoned for 5 years. Forrest kicked the maids again, and after giving instructions to the butler, he started the car once more. He had to find Hope. He had to tell her the truth. He would make it up to her, but just then, his phone began to vibrate violently. The moment he answered, Bianca's cries for help flooded his ears. "Forrest, where are you? Come save me. He's going to kill me." Hearing this, a contemptuous smile touched Forrest's lips, and a murderous glint flashed in his eyes. "Then you might as well die." Chapter 14. The thought of being played so thoroughly by such a woman made Forrest want to throw her into the city's northern industrial district and leave her for dead. But just letting Bianca die would be too easy. She had to live and pay for what she had done, tenfold. Bianca on the other end of the line paused, then said in disbelief, "Forrest, what are you saying?" "Bianca Ashford, I know everything now. From this moment on, whether you live or die has nothing to do with me. If you dare to come near me again, don't blame me for disregarding our past." There was silence on the other end, followed by Bianca's panicked explanations and the sound of a struggle. After a brief moment of chaos, Grant's calm voice came through the phone. "Mr. Weston, I'll be taking her with me now. I hope no one tries to help her in the future." Forrest grunted in agreement and hung up. He started the car and drove off. The events of the past few days had left his mind in a fog. So much so that, as he went through an intersection, he didn't see the truck coming from the wrong direction. Forrest heard a dull thud, and then his world went completely dark. Crash in a remote village in Appalachia, Hope looked at the little girl with dull, yellowing hair and patched clothes. She knelt and gently stroked her head. "Willow, can you tell me why you're still here so late and haven't gone home?" Although Hope had only been teaching here for a month, she already had a good understanding of the village. Most of the residents were elderly people and left behind children. The conditions weren't dire, but they weren't good either. There was only one school in the village, which housed all grades from kindergarten to middle school. But the total number of students was less than 100, and teachers were scarce. Hope herself had to teach 5 subjects in 3 different classes. It was exhausting, but Hope found the life fulfilling. It made her feel alive, useful, and able to help so many people. So, after school, Hope took on the task of checking the classrooms from the elderly teacher, making sure no student was studying so hard they forgot to go home. And she encountered Willow every time she did her rounds. In the past, Willow had always managed to cleverly slip away. Today, Hope had specifically waited for her and caught her. For safety's sake, Hope planned to get the details and then personally walk Willow home. But to her surprise, the little girl's eyes suddenly reddened, and she burst into tears. I don't have a home anymore." "What?" In a small room, Hope placed a steaming bowl of noodles in front of the little girl and gently stroked her head. "Here, eat first. Be careful, it's hot." Willow politely said thank you, then picked up her chopsticks and began to eat, one mouthful after another. The ravenous way she ate made Hope's heart ache. "No rush, eat slowly. There's more in the pot." After her release, Hope had developed stomach problems and had a poor appetite. The food rations the school provided once a month could last her for several months. Willow nodded, but after finishing one bowl of noodle soup, she put down her bowl and licked the soup from her lips. "Miss Sheridan, I'm full." Hope felt the little girl's belly, and confirming it was full, pulled her into her arms and stroked her head. "I just spoke with Miss Peterson. She's in the hospital in town for a few days and can't take care of you. How about you stay with me for now?" Willow had just told Hope she was an orphan and had been living with Miss Peterson, the school's longest-serving teacher. But Miss Peterson had suddenly fallen ill and hadn't had time to arrange for someone to look after Willow. Willow had been secretly spending her nights in the classroom. Fortunately, it was early summer, and there were quilts for the children's naps, so Willow had been safe. After confirming the situation with Miss Peterson, Hope had arranged to take care of her for the time being. Hearing Hope's words, Willow's eyes lit up. "Really? Can I?" Hope was charmed by the little girl and scooped her into her arms. "Of course you can." Chapter 15. In the days that followed, a little shadow trailed behind Hope. Wherever she went, Willow would obediently follow, sometimes even offering to help. Her sweet and sensible demeanor won the affection of the other teachers. Linda, who had come from the city with Hope, put the few pieces of meat from her bowl into Willow's while chatting with Hope. As the only one who knew Hope's situation, she asked curiously, "Are you really not considering getting married again? I heard Mr. Harrington from the next class is interested in you." As she spoke, Linda subtly gestured toward a man sitting nearby. He wore rimless glasses and a white shirt. His long lashes fluttered like a butterfly's wings, casting a faint shadow in the flickering candlelight. Hope smiled but said nothing. She wasn't considering remarriage for now. Her focus was on the children at the school. Linda didn't press the issue. After they washed their lunchboxes, she took Willow's hand and they walked out. But shortly after, someone at the door waved to Hope. "Miss Sheridan, Miss Peterson is asking for you." Hope never imagined it would be the last time she saw Miss Peterson. In just 1 week, the once spirited old teacher had withered like a rapidly wilting flower, huddled in thick clothes. The light in her bright eyes had dimmed. Only when she saw Hope approaching with Willow did her eyes briefly light up. Miss Peterson didn't have the strength to say much. The gist was that she felt her time was near. Her only remaining attachments were to this school and to Willow. She hoped Hope and the other teachers would continue the spirit of dedication, so the seeds they had sown would blossom across the land. She also hoped Hope could find a good home for Willow. Amidst Hope's sorrowful gaze and Willow's cries, the car door closed again and drove into the distance. Returning to one's roots before death was Miss Peterson's only wish. Hope held Willow tightly, stopping her from chasing the car, and closed her eyes, her heart aching. The two figures, one large and one small, looked exceptionally lonely on the dusty road under the setting sun. To fulfill Miss Peterson's last wish, Hope spent her free time at the local adoption agency trying to find a suitable family for Willow. But after several trips, the answer was always no. There were many orphans on the waiting list ahead of Willow, and the screening process for adoptive parents was long. The earliest she could be placed was 2 years from now. What would Willow do for those 2 years? Hope walked out of the agency with heavy steps, her gaze lost in the distance, her mind in a turmoil. Just then, a calm, clear voice spoke from above her. "Hope Sheridan, perhaps I could adopt her." Hope snapped her head up and met Cole Harrington's calm eyes. In a small tea house, Hope listened to Cole's words, her heart unable to find peace for a long time. "Why did you suddenly decide to adopt Willow with me?" When Hope first heard Cole's offer, she had assumed he meant he would adopt Willow with another woman. She never expected that woman to be her. Cole didn't answer her question directly. Instead, he brought up something else. "You may have forgotten, but we met many years ago. I was the man you saved in the alley." Hope stared at the smiling man before her, then gasped in surprise. "It was you." Chapter 16 that winter, when Hope heard the devastating news of Bianca's boating accident, she had decided to go home to check on Forrest. To get back sooner, Hope took a shortcut through a small alley. There, at a corner, she stumbled upon a man covered in blood, barely breathing. For her own safety, she shouldn't have gotten involved. But for some reason, at that moment, she inexplicably changed course. She administered first aid while calling for an ambulance. She only left once the man was safely on his way to the hospital. Afterward, I tried to find you, but with no luck. It wasn't until the Weston family scandal broke Forrest Weston sending his wife to prison over a few dead flowers that I knew you were his wife. I believed you were innocent and wanted to get you out. But then, that group of people followed me to this country. By the time I dealt with my enemies, I found out you had come to Appalachia. So, I followed you here. I know you want to dedicate the rest of your life to this land, so I will stay with you. Hope Sheridan, can you give me a chance? Hope's mind was reeling. She thought Cole wanted to talk about Willow, but somehow the conversation had turned to her own marriage. It was so sudden that Hope didn't know how to respond. Clearly, Cole knew he had been forward. He smiled at her and said it wasn't urgent. She could take her time and give him an answer when she was ready. Hope could afford to wait, but Willow couldn't. With Miss Peterson's passing, Willow was once again without a legal guardian. Once reported to the system, she would be sent to an orphanage, but Willow didn't want to go. As an orphan herself, Hope understood Willow's feelings. She clenched her fists and finally made a decision. 3 days later, she and Cole Harrington entered into a marriage of convenience and adopted Willow as their daughter. In the first winter after leaving Forest, Hope had a new little family. Although she and Cole had only become a couple for Willow's sake, Cole was exceptionally good to her. His kindness wasn't just material, like Forest's. It was in every detail of their lives. After getting married, they moved out of the teacher's dormitory and rented a small courtyard house. The yard was small, but Cole filled it with flowers that Hope and Willow loved. Hope's stomach was weak, so he woke up early every day to cook her nourishing porridge. Every night, he would hold her hand and Willow's as they walked slowly home. Willow adored her new mother. Every night, she would crawl into Hope's bed, hugging her arm tightly as they fell asleep together. Time passed, and her once shattered heart was slowly pieced back together. So, when Hope saw Forest and Finn again, she was remarkably calm. A year later, Forest and Finn finally saw Hope Sheridan again. A look of ecstatic joy appeared on both their faces, and they rushed toward her. Hope, Mama, but in the next second their smiles froze, because Hope, walking toward them from a distance, was holding two people's hands. The man on her left had a calm gaze, the girl on her right was smiling sweetly. They looked like a family of three. Hope, who is he? Mama, who is she? Chapter 17, the father and son's voices trembled, their eyes filled with a mixture of anxiety and fear. For a moment, they both regretted asking the question. They had a feeling that the answer Hope was about to give was one they couldn't accept, but Hope spoke first. This is my husband, Cole Harrington, and this is my daughter, Willow. Impossible, Finn was the first to react. He broke free from his father's hand, ran to Hope, and tried to pull her hand away from Willow's. You're my mama, you're not allowed to have other children. By the end, Finn was so aggrieved his eyes turned red. Hope pulled Willow behind her and scolded the boy in front of her. Finn Weston, the sharp reprimand startled Finn, and he burst into tears. His cries finally brought the stunned Forest over. He picked up his son, comforting him while looking at Hope. Hope, I know you're angry with us, but you can't joke with a child like this. You have no idea how we've been this past year. Ever since he learned Bianca's true colors, Forest had been consumed by guilt and remorse. He had sworn that as soon as he found Hope, he would do everything in his power to make it up to her and treat her better than ever. But Forest had searched the entire capital, even gone to Hope's old hometown in the southwest, and found no trace of her. Meanwhile, Finn, having not seen his mother for so long, had fallen ill. The long-term exhaustion and the after-effects of the car crash finally caught up with Forest, and he too fell ill. It was then that he thought of Hope, of how she used to take care of him. He even remembered the last thing she had said to him before she went to prison. She had said, Forest Weston, you will regret this. Forest finally did regret it. He regretted that it was only now that he realized he had feelings for Hope. Soon, the entire city knew that Forest Weston had gone mad looking for his wife. Listening to Forest's emotional account, Hope felt nothing. She looked at the man before her with calm eyes. I'm not joking. I am married and Willow is my daughter. The words were like a thunderclap, leaving Forest dizzy and stunned. His mind went blank, his heart feeling as if it were being squeezed by an invisible hand, his breathing becoming rapid and difficult. Impossible, impossible, you must be lying to me. He had known for a long time that Hope liked him. She thought she had hidden it well, but he had seen through all her little attempts to get his attention. For the 5 years of their marriage, Hope had loved him so much. How could she suddenly marry someone else? So she must be lying. With that thought, Forest suppressed the panic in his heart and looked at the woman before him again. Hope Sheridan, it's normal for you to be angry, but it was all a misunderstanding. I can explain everything. You can't keep joking like this. Besides, Finn's health isn't good right now. Can you please come back with us? As Forest spoke, he moved to take Hope's hand, but Hope dodged behind Cole. No, Hope found it ironic. How much confidence did Forest have to think she would just obediently go back with them? Since they were here, she would make everything clear to prevent any future entanglement. With that thought, Hope squeezed Cole's hand. They exchanged a knowing look and nodded. The intimate gesture was an affront to Forest. His hands, hanging by his sides, clenched into fists. Let's talk somewhere else. Chapter 18, it was summer vacation, so the school was mostly empty. Their footsteps echoed in the quiet hallway. A breeze blew in through the window, bringing a touch of coolness to the oppressive heat. As Hope pushed the door open, a cloud of dust fell from the doorframe, settling on the father and son. Finn, disgusted, hid behind Forrest. Forrest said nothing, simply taking in the room before him. This was Hope and Cole's office at the school, and also their temporary resting place. The room was tiny, its contents visible at a glance. Everything was pushed against the walls: a bed, a desk, 2 chairs, nothing else. This had been Hope's home for nearly a year. This was all she had. Seeing this, a pang of heartache flashed in Forrest's eyes. In the capital, as Mrs. Weston, Hope had had the best of everything. Nothing like this. So, Forrest looked at Hope, his voice filled with pity. "You live here?" The small room couldn't hold many people, so Hope held Willow in her lap and sat on the bed with Cole. She then gestured for Forrest and Finn to sit in the chairs opposite them. Finn stared wistfully at Willow in Hope's arms. He wanted to be held by his mother too, but remembering how she had just defended Willow, he could only sit obediently next to his father. Hope was not surprised by Forrest's question. A man from a wealthy family like Forrest, who had been meticulously cared for since birth and had never known a day of hardship, would naturally look down on this. "I think it's fine. At least it's better than prison." In prison, she couldn't eat or sleep well and had to be constantly on guard against being bullied. In the first few days after her release, Hope had nightmares every night, terrified that she would wake up back in prison. Hearing the word prison, Forrest felt as if his heart had been pierced. He slowly clenched his fists, his voice turning hoarse. "About prison, I was wrong. I found out later that you didn't kill those flowers. It was Bianca who deliberately framed you." As he spoke, Forrest's voice grew quieter. He knew it was too late to say these things now. It couldn't erase the wounds Hope had suffered. But he still wanted to make it up to her, to compensate for the harm she had endured during those 5 years. The truth, finally revealed 4 years later, brought Hope a sense of relief, followed by a surge of grief and bitterness that rose in her throat. Her nose stung, and her eyes reddened. She quickly lowered her head to hide her vulnerability. Hope had always thought she had let it go, that she no longer cared about the truth. But now, the culprit who had personally sent her to prison was telling her the truth himself. He said he had misunderstood her. He said he would do his best to make it up to her. He said he was wrong and hoped she could forgive him. But why should the innocent have to apologize to the perpetrator? If Hope really forgave Forrest, what would the 5 years of her suffering count for? Cole, sensing her distress, reached out and held her hand tightly, giving her silent comfort and strength. After a long while, Hope looked up and faced Forrest again. "I'm sorry, I can't forgive you." "Forrest Weston, you have no right to ask for my forgiveness. The fact that I don't hate you is the biggest concession I can make. The only reason I agreed to talk to you is to make things clear once and for all. I am married. You can check if you don't believe me. I have my own little family now, and I hope you and Finn Weston will stop bothering me." "No, Mama, you have to come back with me." Chapter 19. Hearing that he might never see Hope again, Finn, in Forrest's arms, panicked completely. He struggled out of his father's embrace and ran to grab Hope's hand, trying to pull her outside. But the next moment, Willow jumped down from Hope's lap and pushed him away. "She's my mama, you can't just take someone else's mama." Finn, caught off guard, fell hard to the ground. The pain in his rear made him burst into tears. "Mama!" Willow, flustered, rushed back to Hope, quickly explaining, "I didn't mean to." She glanced at Hope nervously, afraid she would be angry. Hope patted her daughter's head reassuringly. "It's okay, Mama believes you." Hearing this, Finn, still on the floor, grew frantic. Not only was his mother not comforting him, but she was comforting the person who had pushed him. He scrambled up from the ground and lunged at Willow. "You pest! Let go of my mama!" Finn Weston, just as Cole stood up to protect them, Forrest moved first, pulling his son back and looking at him with a stern face. "What did I tell you before we came here? Have you forgotten?" Finn finally stopped, glaring at Willow in Hope's arms. The look scared Willow so much she buried her face in Hope's side. Forrest stood up and looked at Hope, who was behind Cole, and pleaded, "Hope, stop this. Just come back with me. How can you survive here? This man can't give you anything. If you want to be married, we can get the license as soon as we get back. As for the wedding, how about Bali?" Forrest blissfully imagined their future, not noticing that Hope's gaze was growing colder. "Forrest Weston, if I could survive in the Weston family, under your roof, why can't I survive here? My husband can give me far more than you ever could. Most importantly, he trusts me unconditionally, unlike you, who passes judgment without knowing the facts. And besides, the fact that you never got a marriage license with me means we were never meant to have a future. You should go." Hope stood up as well, making it clear she wanted them to leave. Hearing her words, Forrest's face turned pale. He wanted to argue, but he couldn't find the words. Because everything Hope said was true. He had never trusted her, which was why he had hurt her again and again. Just as Hope was about to say more, the ground suddenly began to shake violently. The whole room creaked and groaned, and cracks appeared in the walls, as if it could collapse at any moment. "Earthquake, it's an earthquake! Run!" In an instant, everyone's expression changed, and they scrambled for the exit. But their speed was no match for the collapsing building. Just as a falling beam was about to hit Willow, Hope, without a thought for herself, moved to shield her. But Cole, from behind, pushed Hope out of the way and covered their daughter with his own body. "Go!" Hope's eyes widened, and she let out a piercing scream. Cole Willow crashed the building, which had been standing just a moment before, was instantly reduced to a pile of rubble, sending up clouds of dust. Forrest, who was a step too slow, only had time to shield his son before he was knocked unconscious. His world instantly went dark. Drip, drip. Rainwater seeped through the rubble, landing on Forrest's pale face. After a while, his fingers twitched slightly, and he slowly opened his heavy eyelids. He instinctively looked at the son he was holding tightly in his arms and called his name softly. "Finn, Finn." Soon, a soft, kitten-like cry came from Finn's mouth. "Daddy, I'm scared." Chapter 20, Forrest struggled to lift his hand to comfort his son, but it was then he realized he couldn't move it at all. Forrest forced his eyes open wider and saw that his arm was bent at a bizarre angle. The slightest movement sent a sharp, intense pain shooting through his entire body. He realized his arm was broken. To avoid further injury, he lowered it again and gently soothed his son. "It's okay, don't be afraid. The rescue team will be here soon to save us." On the other side, Cole and Willow were in much better shape. They were protected by a triangular concrete block that had shielded them from most of the debris. Cole only had minor scrapes. He stroked his daughter's head in his arms and soothed her. "Willow, don't be afraid. Someone will be here to rescue us soon." In the darkness, the little girl's eyes were exceptionally bright. "I'm not afraid. Mama told me before that no matter what happens, she'll be the first to come and save me." Remembering the moment just before the building collapsed, a flicker of worry crossed Cole's eyes. Although he had pushed Hope out of the way, she had seen him and their daughter being buried. He couldn't imagine her despair and pain, but he believed she would hold on. So, Cole stroked his daughter's head again. "Yes, Mama will definitely bring people to save us." Willow, repeating her father's words, had complete faith in Hope. From a distance, Finn heard this and immediately retorted, "You're lying. Mama will definitely come and save me first. Children can be so competitive sometimes." The two of them began to argue. "You're the one who's lying. Mama will definitely come and save me when I had a fever. Mama was always the first to notice and take me to the hospital with Daddy. Every time school let out, Mama and Daddy were the first to pick me up. And every holiday, Mama always gave me the first gift. Have you ever had that?" Willow's words successfully silenced Finn because he had never experienced any of that. Before he could even form memories, his mother had been sent to prison by his father. After her release, Hope had only been with him for a few months. Suddenly, as if remembering something, Finn quickly said, "But Mama threw herself in front of the food cart to protect me and Daddy, and she found me when I was kidnapped." But before he could finish, Willow cut him off. "But Mama told me you didn't like her doing that, and you even framed her. What's the use of saying all this now?" Finn opened his mouth but couldn't say anything. He could only look up at Forrest in confusion. "Daddy," just as Forrest was about to tell them how much Hope loved her son, he suddenly heard an unfamiliar voice from above the rubble. "Miss Sheridan, if you keep digging with your bare hands like this, your hands won't be able to take it." "But my husband and child are still under the rubble. I have to get them out." Buzz hearing this, the four of them's eyes instantly lit up. It was Hope had come to save them. Both Forrest and Finn, and Cole and Willow, were convinced that Hope was there to save them. On the rubble, under the pouring rain, a frail figure was kneeling, frantically digging at the dirt with her bare hands. Hope's lips were white from the cold. The only color on her face was in her bloodshot eyes. Faster, Faster, her husband and daughter were still in there, the image of them being buried under the rubble was still vivid in her mind. She had already lost one family, she couldn't and wouldn't lose a second. With that thought, she quickened her pace. Her fair hands were already raw and bleeding from the friction, and soon the white of her bones was exposed. But Hope, as if she couldn't feel the pain, just kept digging faster. Rumble Chapter 21. With the help of others, the huge concrete block covering the four of them was lifted. The moment the light shone in, the four people inside instinctively closed their eyes. Seeing Cole and Willow alive, Hope burst into tears of joy. Thank God, they're okay. Worried about aftershocks, Hope didn't even have time to wipe away her tears before reaching into the rubble. Seeing her bloody hand, Forrest felt a pang of heartache, followed by relief. He knew Hope would come to save him and their son. After all, he was the husband she had admired for years, and Finn was the child she had risked her life to give birth to. They had such a strong blood bond. She would never abandon them. Finn was also thrilled. He knew his mother loved him so much, she would definitely save him and his father first. With that thought, he shot a triumphant look at Willow, as if to say, so what if Mama loves you? She still came to save me first, but Willow didn't show the disappointment or sadness Finn expected, because Hope's hand reached for her first. Mama, Willow was overjoyed. As she was about to rush to Hope, she saw the blood on her hand, and her face instantly filled with worry. Mama, does your hand hurt? Let Willow blow on it for you. As she spoke, Willow was about to blow on Hope's hand. Hope's heart softened, but she still shook her head. It's okay, Mama doesn't feel any pain. With that, Hope reached out to pull Willow and Cole out. Forrest and Finn watched this scene in disbelief. Why wasn't Hope saving them? Just as the father and daughter were pulled to safety, and Cole was holding Hope, about to tend to her wounds, Finn's voice came from below. Mama, what about me? Aren't you going to save me? Hope paused. Just as she was about to answer, an aftershock hit. Look out, run, this time, Cole didn't let go of Hope's hand. A rescuer quickly pulled the father and son out and shouted, Run! The makeshift emergency room, set up in a tent, was a scene of chaos. The beeping of the machines was like a death knell, filling everyone with dread. After seeing the father and daughter sent into the emergency room, Hope's tense body finally relaxed, and she was about to slide down the wall. Just then, a large hand reached out from behind her and steadied her. Hope looked back and met Forrest's complicated gaze. You? As they stood there, speechless, a nurse rushed out, yelling, Who is Cole Harrington's family? The patient is bleeding heavily and needs a family member's signature. Where are they? Buzz, I am Hope pushed Forrest away, and without a backward glance, followed the nurse into the tent. The tent flap fell again, hiding the fleeting pain in Forrest's eyes. After signing the papers, Hope sat down at the blood donation station and exposed her elbow. I'm Cole Harrington's wife. We have the same blood type. I can donate blood to him, Hope urged the nurse, afraid that every second she delayed, Cole would be in more danger. The nurse, seeing her state, couldn't help but advise her, I know you're worried about your husband, but you're not in good condition yourself. How can you donate blood? I'll donate for her. Before Hope could speak, Forrest, who had followed her, cut her off. You? Forrest didn't say much to Hope. He simply sat down next to her and extended his arm. From being buried in the rubble to being rescued, Forrest hadn't had a drop of water. But he still forced himself to stay strong, watching as his blood flowed, one bag after another, filling the blood bags. Gradually, he began to feel cold, his body starting to tremble uncontrollably. But he still gritted his teeth, pressing down on his arm. That's enough. The nurse removed the needle and pressed a cotton ball firmly on the puncture site. Thud, finally unable to hold on any longer, Forrest's head hit the cold table. Forrest Weston, in the last second before he lost consciousness, he thought he heard Hope's urgent call. Chapter 22, after what felt like an eternity, Forrest finally woke from his stupor. But when he opened his eyes, he saw not the blinding lights of a hospital, nor Hope's face, but Cole Harrington's calm, unwavering eyes. Without waiting for him to speak, Cole began, Mr. Weston, thank you for donating blood to save me the other day. Hope isn't well, she's resting. She told me everything about you too, and her thoughts on the matter. I can tell you everything, with the hope that you won't bother her again in the future. As for the child, Hope had said she would handle it herself. Hearing Cole's words, Forrest was stunned. Hope had only been with Cole for a year, and they were already this close. They had been married for 5 years, yet Hope had always hidden her feelings for him, dealing with her own problems. If the butler hadn't told him, he might never have known. Now, she told Cole everything. Suddenly, Forrest's heart felt as if it were being torn apart, each breath a sour, bitter agony. He clenched his fist and looked at the man before him again. What did she decide? Is Hope coming back? Does Hope still want him and their son? Does Hope still love them? Cole calmly relayed Hope's answer. She said that your relationship was wrong from the very beginning. The vast difference in their social status, their different values, and their ways of dealing with the world made Hope realize that she and Forrest could never truly connect. That was why Hope had never asked for anything, obediently playing the part of a wealthy family's wife. She thought that after all these years, even if there was no love, you would at least take her side once, out of respect for her efforts. But you didn't. You didn't investigate, you didn't ask questions, you just sent her to prison. That was the moment her heart died for you, not to mention everything you did after she was released. You confidently trusted your own judgment, time and time again, only trying to win her back after you had completely lost her. But for her, it was too late. Cole paused, then continued from his own perspective. The biggest problem in this marriage was that you never legally married her. You never treated her as a wife from the very beginning. That's why your son, following your example, never treated her as a mother. That's why she chose to sign the relinquishment of custody. So, she has given up her son. Why would she come back for a man who wasn't even her ex-husband, but merely her child's father? He stood up and walked toward the door, then paused. Forrest Weston, do you think what she needs is your attempt to make up for your feelings? Let me give you a piece of advice. Hope isn't as easy to win over as you think. The door was closed again by Cole, leaving Forrest alone in the empty room. The hope and anticipation that had been in his eyes were now completely gone. He was like a puppet, lifeless. After a long time, he raised his uninjured hand to cover his eyes, revealing only the tragic smile on his lips and the bitter tears rolling down from the corners of his eyes. In a daze, Forrest remembered the day he had proposed to Hope. They had been talking about arguments. Hope had answered first. We don't need to fight. I'm very easy to please. I'll probably have talked myself out of it before the argument is even over. Perhaps because he had never heard such a promise before, he had laughed softly, which made Hope's ears turn red. And it was true, just as Hope had said. She really was easy to please. At first, he had thought about buying her gifts to appease her, but Hope had always managed to soothe herself first. Gradually, Forrest got used to it. Since she could handle herself, he focused more of his attention on Bianca. Had anyone ever asked him what he would do if Hope got jealous or angry? Forrest didn't care. She didn't need him to please her. Now he knew she wasn't easy to please at all, and he could never win her back. Chapter 23, the day Forrest and Finn returned to the capital, the weather was beautiful. Finn looked at his mother, his heart still full of unwillingness. Are you really not going to want me anymore? Hope knelt, for the first time truly looking at her son, and told him the cruel truth in an adult's tone. A long time ago, when I was released from prison, I had only one thought, to take you with me, no matter what. But when I saw you call someone else Mama, and your father did nothing, I began to doubt myself for the first time. But I still thought that since we hadn't seen each other for so long, it was normal for you to dislike me. Later, I did many things for you. I even took a knife to the chest to save you. But there was still disgust in your eyes for me. I thought about it for a long time, always asking myself if it was my fault. Now, I finally have the answer. It wasn't my fault, and it wasn't yours either. We just weren't meant to be mother and son. And a large part of the reason for that is your father. So, you don't need to blame yourself, and don't come looking for me again. Just think of your mother as having died in that prison. Hope took a deep breath, stood up, and took her husband's and daughter's hands. She turned and walked away without hesitation. A long time later, 2 very faint sorries were carried to Hope's ears on the wind, but she no longer needed them. 5 years later, the Weston family held another press conference. At the center of the stage, Forrest held Finn's hand and sincerely apologized to all the reporters, shareholders, and perhaps to Hope, who might be watching the news on TV. He said that he had believed slanderous lies and had wronged Hope, and without any investigation, had used his power to send her to prison. He said that all the negative press about Hope over the years had been released with his tacit approval, without any verification. He also said that he and Hope had never been legally married, yet he had still been entangled with Bianca while having a child with Hope. Gasps rippled through the audience, and camera flashes went off like a frenzy. But Forrest didn't care. He continued, announcing his own punishment. He would resign as CEO of the Weston Corporation. All his personal assets would be divided in two. One half would go to Finn, who would have to earn his right to run the Weston Group on his own merit. Until then, old Mr. Weston would take over. The other half would be donated to the impoverished mountain regions of Appalachia so that every child there could have an education. Finally, he would turn himself in to serve a 5-year prison sentence to personally pay the debt he owed Hope. He said he didn't expect Hope to forgive him, only that it might lessen some of his guilt. The empire crumbled. After Forrest's press conference, the Weston Corporation's stock plummeted. Just as it was on the brink of collapse, old Mr. Weston stepped in and, with great effort, saved the company. Furious, old Mr. Weston went to the prison and gave Forrest a harsh beating, telling him not to concern himself with Finn anymore. Old Mr. Weston would personally raise the boy to ensure his grandson didn't follow in his father's footsteps. In a small courtyard in Appalachia, Hope watched the Weston family's press conference on TV, her expression complex. She never expected Forrest to go this far. She thought she knew his character well enough. It would have been good enough if he just didn't bother her anymore. She never thought he would send himself to prison, but perhaps it was for the best. After all, you only feel the pain when the slap lands on your own face. "Mama, come and eat," Willow peeked her small head through the door, smiling sweetly at her. "Coming," Hope quickly responded, turning off the TV and walking out. Outside, the sun was setting, and her husband and daughter were smiling and waving at her. As soon as Hope sat down, the two of them began piling food onto her plate. Looking at her heaping bowl, she smiled, her eyes filled with happiness. This was good enough. For the rest of their lives, a family of three meals a day, through all 4 seasons, never to be separated again.